Emily Miller of the Washington Times with us tonight. Emily, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Oh, it's always a pleasure, Cam.
Well, something controversial in Washington, D.C. that does not involve corruption in elected officials. There's a billboard up that the National Shooting Sports Foundation has paid for, advertising the First Shots program. It says, hey, D.C., it's time for your first shot. Then there's a web address. And again, this is advertising the First Shots program, which is, firearms training and firearms responsibility. But since this is a pro-gun message in an anti-gun town, a lot of people, I guess, including some of those elected officials, have a problem with this, right?
That's right. The mayor of D.C., Vincent Gray, calls the sign irresponsible and offensive. Now, let me say, you hear that and you would picture a sign with someone saying with a gun, shooting down at you at the camera, maybe.
Right.
Something that's actually a little bit scary. No, this is just a woman holding a paper target, saying, it's time for your first shot. And he also said to promote the use of guns in the city, I think, is really anti-safety. So this is, the mayor believes that having a free course on gun safety and training is dangerous to society.
Isn't that amazing?
It's just unbelievable. It's just so DC. And I've talked to Mayor Gray for years about his positions on guns, and he won't even discuss it. He was so anti-gun, he won't even discuss it. So, he's just knee-jerk. And, I think, Larry Keane, who from NSSF, who's the general counsel, that's what he said. He said, his reaction is sadly predictable, knee-jerk, anti-gun to anything firearms. And that's exactly how to describe it. It's not logical. If this was logical, then they would. The mayor has endorsed having, which the city had until recently, a 5-hour safety class that was mandatory for gun owners.
Right.
And D.C. had that since the Heller case, since they were forced to get rid of their gun ban. And just recently, from pressure from gun owners like me, they've removed that and let potential gun owners watch a video that's 30 minutes and it's online and it's free. But, after all of that...
But, again, they do that, Emily, rather than allow a gun store, a range, or someplace where folks can actually get training to open up in the district.
Well, they will say, to be fair, they will say that they can, that there's no law against it, like there is in Chicago, against a shooting range. But to be truthful, they are so stringent on zoning that it's virtually impossible. And
Exactly.
We saw that with Charles Sykes, who's the one gun dealer in D.C., the one legal gun dealer. He lost his lease last summer, and D.C. handed him a map with no streets on it and told him he had to find, in order to stay in business, and this is a man who doesn't sell guns, all he does is transfer them. In order to find some place for his new office, it had to be no closer than 100 yards from a school, a library, a church, a place of worship, an office building, or a residence. Now, name some place in downtown Washington, D.C., which, as we know, is a tiny area.
Right.
It's 100 yards from any of those things. So basically, he went out of business for 3 months, and finally, only because the city was afraid of getting sued again, they finally made this deal where they now have his office is in the police headquarters. Those are their zoning laws, and so that's why there's no shooting ranges. And so the National Shooting Sports Foundation has done this class, and they do it all over the country, and it's free training for new shooters, and you learn the basic rules of safety, your local laws, and then you have an hour and a half on the range. And they're doing it in D.C. They couldn't find any place in D.C. to do it for those reasons, so they're doing it in Maryland and Virginia. And from what I heard, and I spoke to Mike Collins at Sharpshooters today in Virginia, it's in Lorton, Virginia, he said they already are, for their course at their place, it's already completely booked, and it's not till August 24th. So there's huge demand for this. There are people who want to learn how to shoot safety and want to learn how to get at guns, but, the mayor is completely opposed to that.
Absolutely. And, I think it's to the detriment of the people of Washington, D.C. I mean, this is like saying, ultimately, you know what, we better not teach kids to read, because, then they might get some dangerous ideas. I mean, who on earth is opposed to education and training?
It's just, anything, if you say the word gun, they are against it. But I'll say I called chairman of the city council, Phil Mendelson, who wrote these laws, all these gun laws. And, he at first said, Emily, you're trying to make me contradict the mayor. And, I said, quite frankly, it's less about you versus him than you're the man who wrote these laws. And I want to know, you're the one who instituted a 5-hour class that you thought was mandatory. Do you really think a 3-hour safety class makes the city anti-safety, is irresponsible? And what he had to answer, and he totally agreed. And he said, I see nothing wrong with promoting gun safety. And if this is a program which helps people use a firearm responsibly, then that's a good thing. So, this even has split the liberal anti-gun establishment. And, these guys work together to write these laws, but,
right.
They can't really push people to watch this video or to take their class when they're also saying that unless it's government mandated, it has no value. And actually, I'll say, Phil Mendelson said to me when I said to him, well, I think it's more responsible for people to take a 3-hour safety class and watch a video. And he said, well, Emily, are you saying we should bring back the 5-hour class? And I said, no, my problem is with you mandating it. I said, I got training on my own, and look how responsible people are who getting their training on their own. They're not being forced into it.
Well, that's exactly right. What you want to make, and I'm with you, Emily. I don't believe in training mandates, because if you don't want to learn, you're just going to sit there and you're going to ignore the information anyway. But what you want to do is you want to make as much training as possible available to as many people who want to take advantage of that as possible.
And people are responsible. Gun owners are very responsible people. The criminals are not responsible.
Exactly.
And they're not going to take a 3-hour course, and
right.
And training can get expensive. So having a free class is a great benefit to people, and it's only for new people. It's not for experience. And new people, more than anything, I think they need to know the local laws so you avoid getting yourself in trouble in a place like D.C. where it's so stringent. And then you learn the basic fundamentals, safe storage, and then learn how to handle it on the range. And I said to Chairman Mendelson, I said, this is about responsibility and personal responsibility. It doesn't need to be mandated. Now that you've eliminated the 5-hour course, look at the demand people have for getting training.
Absolutely. Emily, as always, appreciate you coming on the program, and look forward to doing this again soon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Emily Miller of the Washington Times joining us here tonight at Cam & Company.